All right, we're going to be in Psalms 15. And while you're turning to that, this is our Independence holiday, I guess you would say, which this is the day that, we celebrate our independence, a country that we live in. We have the freedom to do what we're doing right now. So many countries across this land can't even do what we're doing. And the ones that are trying to do what we're doing right now, they have to do it in hiding and in secret. And that's true. I had the opportunity, I've heard me say, about going to China. And even there, they have to have secret and hiding services. And actually, the time that I went there, the gentleman that was preaching, him and his wife both had just got out of jail because he was caught preaching the gospel. And while he was in there, naturally he was beaten, and they let him go. And when he left there, he went straight to his church and went right back to preaching. But they don't have the freedom that we have, and they don't have the independence that we have. And and I was thinking as I thought of that, and also not only, even across the world that we live in, everyone has the freedom to make a choice. And we do. We have that. We have the freedom to make our own choice to live for the Lord or not live for Him. We do. We have that choice. And God gave us that choice. And as we look through this, we're going to look at this whole small chapter. It's a real small chapter. I think it's 5 verses, and we're going to look through it. And I want to show you some things that I feel like God showed me when I come across this and I began to read it. And I thought about it being Independence Day, and each one of us are independently made and independently have our own choice. And we make our own decisions. We make our own choice of which direction we want to go in life, what jobs we want to do, and that type of stuff. And even David, and I think he was even kind of looking at the same thing. And it starts in verse 1, Psalms 15. It says, and he's asking God, he says, Lord, who may abide in your tabernacle? Who may dwell in your holy hill? So he asked God 2 questions. Who will abide in your tabernacle? And this word abide actually in the Hebrew kind of means visit. Okay? And the reason for that is because of the fact, Moses, they left Egypt. They was in the wandering in the wilderness. God told them to build a tabernacle. Okay? So in that tabernacle, the only ones that were allowed in there were certain people. Okay? And naturally one of them was the priest. And you could only go, and the priest was the only one that was allowed to go into the Holy of Holies. So, and even David asked, who's the one who's allowed to go in there? But the thing of it is, they would only go in there and be in there temporarily. They would only just go in and visit. And he's asking who's allowed to do this? Who can go and visit in this? And then he turns around and asks, and the question says, who may dwell in your holy hill? Now this particular word dwell, in that particular sense, means a place of residence. Okay? So who is permanently going to be on your holy hill? And is he speaking of heaven, or is he speaking of, the Zion, or, where is he speaking of? But irregardless of wherever he's speaking of, he's talking about on a permanent basis. On a permanent basis. Who will permanently be in your holy hill? So he kind of makes you wonder. So David's asking these questions. And as I look through these things, I kind of got the impression that maybe, and even in all the commentaries that I looked at and read and looked through, no one ever specifically said that God gave him the answer, or was David, maybe the Spirit of God was working through David, and these were the answers that he gave. But just look at it like this, that God answered David. David asked him, said, Lord, who may abide in your tabernacle? Who may dwell in your holy hill? And in verse 2 it says this, he who walks uprightly. So he's kind of giving him an answer. He who walks uprightly. This word uprightly, and it's not talking about a posture thing, okay? Walking straight up. That's not what it's talking about. The word uprightly means complete, whole, integrity, and even truth. The one who walks in truth, the one who walks with integrity, and the one who's made whole. That's what he's talking about. This is what he's talking about. Even in Job 36:4, it says this, "For truly my words are not false. One who is perfect in knowledge is with you." And even Proverbs 28:18, it says, "Whoever walks blamelessly will be saved." And then it goes on, even in that verse Proverbs, it says, "But he who is perverse in his ways will suddenly fall." And this word perverse is not what you're thinking. That's not what it means, not in the Bible. It means twist or distort or made crooked. Someone who's doing wrong. Can you imagine? You know, the one who's upright. That's what he says. That was his answer. The one who's upright is the one who's going to be able to do these things. Then it goes on. It says, and works righteousness. The one who works righteousness. This word righteous means justice, rightness, moral, and even legal. So is our morals even right to be able to go into the tabernacle or dwell in that hill? Matthew 5:6, and this is one of the Beatitudes. It says, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled." See, even Jesus, from the time of when David was looking at this, all the way over to the time of whenever Jesus spoke and gave the Beatitudes, he said, "Blessed are the ones who hunger and thirst for those things." You know, do we truly hunger and thirst? Is this what God was telling David? It says this person has got to do works of righteousness. Are you even hungering and even thirsting for these things? And then the next one, he says this. It says, "and speaks truth in his heart." And it's not talking about the heart that goes thump, 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 thump. That's not the heart he's talking about. He's talking about the inner man, the place where the emotions and the passions come from, the place of the courage that we have. That's the heart that he's speaking of. The inside, the deep inner person. And I'm not talking about this thing up here. I'm talking about the deep inner man which lives within inside of you. That heart. And I'll give you another example. Even Jesus said this in Matthew 15. It says, "But those things which proceed out of the mouth come from the heart." Those things that come out of the mouth come from the heart. Kind of makes you wonder. You hear so many people in this world, all the different things that they say and speak of about people and all these different things. Is it coming from the heart? Is it truly coming from the heart? Because, I mean, even David asked, and I'll keep going back. It says, "Who will abide in your tabernacle? Who will dwell in your holy hill?" And I'm just reading the answers. Can you imagine all of these different things? And it says, "But those things which proceed out of the mouth come from the heart, and they defile a man." They defile him. The word defile means nasty, ugly, just filthy, and all these different things. That's what the word defile means. That's what it means. So can you imagine, even all the way into the New Testament? And I know what you're thinking, and I'm going to inject this. You know, and many people may say, "Well, you're talking about the Old Testament times whenever Jesus wasn't here and they weren't saved." Yes, I am talking about that. But Jesus also plainly said, and I've said this time and time again, he said, "I did not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it." And you cannot have the New Testament without having the Old. God said he don't change. He never changes. So if that's the case, then many of these things apply to our lives. And yes, we are saved by grace through faith. The Bible plainly says that. I know that. But if you go back and look at all the different commands in the New Testament, he says, "If you love me, you'll keep my commandments." And everything that God says, even in the Old Testament, those things are commands to us to do. And even, can you imagine, the things that we're reading and looking at, all the different things and how hard it could be, and we're not even finished. We've only looked at one verse. And it even goes on in verse 3, and it says, "He who does not backbite with his tongue." This word backbite means to slander. That's what the word backbite means, is to slander someone. And even Webster gave it a definition. It says, "malicious talk about someone who is not present." Who will abide in my tabernacle? Who will be the one who dwells in the holy hill? This person won't. That's what he's saying. He who does not backbite. Those are the ones who will be, but those are the ones who does these things won't be. In Psalms 105:1 it says, whoever secretly slanders his neighbor. This is out of the book of Psalms 101:5. Whoever secretly slanders his neighbor, him I will destroy. That's the book. That's the verse. That's what the Bible says. And David's asking, and evidently God is giving the answer. And even in that same verse it says, whoever secretly slanders his neighbor, him I will destroy. The one who has a haughty look and a proud heart, him I will not endure. So see, there's more in there. And David's asking these questions. And one of the reasons I thought about this particular sermon, sometimes we need reminders in our life. And this one reminded me of many things, even of my own self. Even of my own self. We call ourselves Christians. We call ourselves wanting to walk with God. But yet, do we truly do what His Word says? And I feel like it's a good reminder for every one of us. The backbiting with his tongue. He who does not backbite with his tongue. Those are the ones that will be in there. And then the next section it says, nor does evil to his neighbor. Nor does evil to his neighbor. And you've heard me say this many times. This particular word in the Bible, whenever we hear the word evil, the first thing every one of us think about, just as an example, is Hitler, Saddam Hussein, Charles Manson, all those people who really went out there and slaughtered people, cut them up or whatever they did, and what did Hitler do? I think he burned many of them, and all this type of stuff. But, in the Bible, that's not necessarily what it means. The word evil, if you look it up and you do some studying, you'll find out it means also disagreeable. That's evil in the sight of God. Unpleasantness, that's what it means. Displeasing, even making someone unhappy or being hurtful or even being unkind. Unkind, just a simple little word, being unkind. It also means doing injury or doing someone wrong. It also means affliction, adversity, and even mischief. That's evil in the sight of God. That's evil in the sight of God. Can you imagine? Even that one little simple little word. It says, nor does evil to his neighbor. Who is your neighbor? Even the Bible says this. Who is your neighbor? We know that. Everybody's your neighbor. Everyone who is your neighbor. It doesn't make no difference the color, the race, the creed, or whoever, the culture, or anything else. They're your neighbor. It's amazing. It's truly amazing. God has blessed me to go into 2 different countries. Actually, many more, time you count all the stops of flying. And how many people are just so pleasant and nice to you because you come from another country, because you come from a country that's so blessed and so overwhelmingly blessed by God. And people just welcome you in because you come from, they think you're rich. They truly do. If you got $10 in your pocket, you're a wealthy man over in some of these places. And it's truly amazing, and they welcome you. But yet it's so sad in our country today that whenever people come into ours, we look at them, and if they're a different color, race, or creed, or anything, we down them. We down them. Let me share something with you, my friend. One of these days, when they die, and possibly another man dies, you may be standing beside him before the King of Kings. Because every person is going to bend their knee before Jesus Christ. It don't make no difference what color you are or anything else. And we're not supposed to do evil to our neighbor. It don't make no difference who he is. If you look at it through the eyes of God and what the Bible says about things, it doesn't make any difference. Because their blood runs just as red as yours does. They have a soul, they have a spirit, and when they die, they go into the same place, and there's no separation up there. There's none. Do not do evil to your neighbor, and that's what he says. The ones who does these things, he is telling David, you will not dwell in my holy place. You will not abide in my tabernacle. That's what he just told David. That's what he was telling him. And that's the things that we need to think about. In Romans 12:9 it says, let love be without hypocrisy. Abhor what is evil, cling to what is good. This word abhor means to hate and despise what is evil. That's what Paul was telling them. If we see evil, we're supposed to despise it. We're supposed to hate it. We're supposed to hate those things. We're supposed to be kind, gentle, and all of the things that we're supposed to do. And even in that same verse, it goes on. It says, nor does take up a reproach against his friend. I mean, a friend and a neighbor is basically the same thing if you look at it through God's eyes. This word reproach means to taunt, to scorn, to shame, disgrace, or even rebuke. That's what the word reproach means in the Hebrew meaning. That's what God was trying to convey across the people. Nor does he take up maybe shame against his friend or rebuke his friends. We're supposed to love our neighbors. We're supposed to love our friends. We're not supposed to shame people. We're not supposed to disgrace them. We're not supposed to scorn them or taunt them, because that's what the word reproach means. And I got this verse. It's 1 Corinthians 13. And this is out of the Message Bible. And I'll share it with you. I mean, I use Bible Gateway a lot because of the fact it has a lot of different versions in there. And I read some of it, and if you're interested, I mean, it would really help you learn a lot about what different verses mean. Okay, so what they do, they just translate it different. And this is out of the Message Bible, and I really like this. And y'all have heard this. Anyway, let me read. 1 Corinthians 13, starting in verse 4. It says, if I give anything I own to the poor, and even go to the stake to be burned as a martyr, but I do not love, I've gotten nowhere. So no matter what I say, what I believe, and what I do, I'm bankrupt without love, which I mean is true. And it goes on, it says this. It said, love never gives up. Never gives up. You think about God and the love that he has for us. How many of you has he given up on? None. He hasn't given up on us. And it goes on, says, love cares more for others than for self. Love doesn't want what it doesn't have. Love doesn't strut. Love doesn't have a swelled head. Love doesn't force itself on others. Love isn't always me first. Love doesn't fly off the handle. Love doesn't keep score of the sins of others. Love doesn't revile what others grovel. Love takes pleasure in the flowering of truth. Love puts up with anything. Love trusts God always. Love always looks for the best. Love never looks back. A lot of us have a lot of trouble with that one. But love never looks back, but it keeps going to the end. Love keeps going to the end, to the very end. And then when I read that, I thought about Jesus. Do you know that he loved us all the way to the bitter end? And even when he went back to glory, to his home, he never quit loving us. Even the people that beat him, even the ones that shoved the crown on his head, even the ones that drove the nails in his hand and his feet, put a spear in his side, and whipped him like a miserable animal. What did he say on the cross? He said, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Because he loved them. He still loved them. All the way to the bitter end. And that's what we're supposed to do. We're not supposed to have a reproach against our friend or do evil to our neighbor. We're supposed to love them regardless. I know it's a hard thing to do. I know it is. But that's what we're supposed to do. We have to put forth that great effort. In verse 4 it says this, in whose eyes a vile person is despised. In Isaiah 32:6 it says, for a foolish person will speak foolishness, and his heart will work iniquity, to practice ungodliness, and this is what this person is doing, also to utter error against the Lord, to keep the hungry unsatisfied, and he will cause the drink of the thirsty to fail. In whose eyes a vile person is despised. We're supposed to despise these people. I know it's hard to do, but a person that constantly does evil, it's not the person that we're supposed to despise, friends. It's the sin that they're doing. Not the person. You don't hate the person. You just hate the sin. You love the person. You care for the person. And what did he say? In the eyes of a vile person is despised. And then the next one it says, but he honors those who fear the Lord. And I kind of combine these two. He who swears to his own hurt and does not change. But he who honors those who fear the Lord. You ever met a true, I mean, just a person that just utterly I don't even know what the word would be, just loves God, just loves Jesus. And you see them and you say, man, I wished I was in that depth or had that passion like they have, or have that desire like they have. And you constantly going to this person, you're basically giving them honor because they strive and they hunger for the things of God. They strive and they want more each and every moment, every day. You get around them and all you hear is something about Jesus or God or this or that about the Bible. You give them honor. And that's what we're supposed to do. I've met many people like this, and it just kind of makes me feel bad because I don't have that depth of passion that they do. And we're supposed to honor them. But not only that, but we're supposed to be wanting and desiring the same things that they do. But he honors those who fear the Lord. So you're giving credit to the person who really strives and push to get closer to him. And then it goes on and says, he who swears to his own hurt and does not change. And what this means, it says, he is one that always prefers a good conscience. This is somebody who really prefers a good conscience instead of what the world has to offer. And that's what that means. He'd rather hurt for the Lord than desire the things of the world. That's what he wants. That's what this person wants. And that's what God's saying. These are the ones that I want in my dwelling place. These are the ones I want in my tabernacle. And even in Matthew 22, starting in 37, and you know this time and time again, it says, and Jesus said to him, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul and mind. This is the first and great commandment. And combining everything that I have put in the past, what did Jesus say? And the second is like this, thou shalt love their neighbor as yourself. All of those things, all the way into the New Testament. All the way into the New Testament. Even Jesus was telling us to do all these things. And then the last one is verse 5. And I know I'm moving along, but I'm getting to something. The next one, he says, and he who does not put out his money at usury, nor does he take a bribe against the innocent. And what this means, and I wrote this down, a gentleman wrote this, and he says, he does not lend money to get more money. And that's what that means. Who does not put his own money in at an usury. In other words, he don't use his money to gain money. And then the next one says, nor does he take a bribe against the innocent. And what that is, it says he does not take the money to do, he does not take money to do what is not fair. In other words, he don't take his money to hurt people. And so many people in this world, they use their money to hurt people, not to help them. How many businesses have you ever seen, and I've heard of them, which I've been blessed, I've never worked for one, that would take people and they would work them and possibly never give them a raise or never give them any opportunities or never give them any kind of bonuses or help them. They just want labor out of them. And that's taking their own money for their own gain. That's not helping people. That's not helping them at all. What did Zacchaeus do? He was up in the tree, and when Jesus came along, he told him to come down. And then what did he do? He came and he sat and he ate lunch with him or supper. And he got through and he told him, he said, man, I'm going to go back and I'm going to pay back everybody I've took money from, and I'm going to give them 4 times more. Because he wanted to get it right with God. He wanted to make everything right. And that's a great example. And I'm not telling you to go out and do that. I'm not telling you to do that. You only do what God convicts you to do. But we know that we shouldn't take money or funds or anything to hurt people or destroy people. And it's truly sad today, and I'm not scared at all to say it, of how many people on TV today, they beg for your money just so that they can have great gain and luxuries and all the things that they truly desire, and give promises that they know will not ever happen, or send you some little trinket telling you that it's going to help you. And what did God say? He says you do not make images of anything in heaven or earth. He says you don't do those things, but yet they want to sell them to you. And what did Jesus do? He went to the temple and he run them out. Sometimes I wish he would come back and he would run out so many things in the church today, because people do not use the Bible. They do not tell or do not use the words that God tells us to do. And they take everything and twist it and turn it around. And then the next one he says, he who does these things shall never be moved. He who does these things shall never be moved. Can you imagine abiding by every one of these little laws that I just read? Can you imagine abiding by every one of them? And I know what goes through people's minds, because I said the same thing myself. How in the world could I ever live by these few verses? You really stop and think about it, it would be a battle. It really would. But we're supposed to strive. We're supposed to really strive. How many times whenever someone says something to us that hurt us, and you're standing there and you're boiling inside of you, and you know that something's supposed to come out of your mouth that shouldn't be coming out of your mouth. How many times do you say within your side of yourself, God, please hold my tongue? Do we do that, or we do let it fly? Do we have, even the Bible tells us to have self-control. So see, there ain't a whole lot of things that we can say that the Bible does not tell us what we can do to help us. But we have to strive, and we have to go after these things. Just like it said about the righteous, we hunger and thirst for these things. Do you hunger and thirst for God? Do you hunger and thirst for righteousness and all the other things that he says that we can have? Or do we just live life by the skin of our teeth and hope and pray that we make it to the tabernacle or to the holy hill? Which one do we do? And I like this. Jesus told his disciples one time in John 14. You know, and I've heard people say this. You know, how do I make it? How do I know? You know, if you're saying I've got to do all of these things to make it to his tabernacle or make it to heaven, we'll just say heaven. You know, the Bible says that we have to do all of these things to make it to heaven. How do we know? How do we know these things? How do we do these things? How do we know how to do it? Jesus told his disciples one time, he said this, he said, let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. I mean, that's the first thing we're supposed to do. We're supposed to believe in Jesus, know that he existed, he was real, he's the Son of God, he truly died for us, he rose from the grave for us, and we're supposed to believe in him. And he even told his disciples, he says, in my Father's house are many mansions. He says, if it were not so, I would have told you. He says, I go to prepare a place for you, and if I go prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. And in verse 4 it says this, and where I go, you know, and the way you know. He told them. He said, where I'm going, you already know where I'm going. And you know the way there. You know the way there. That's what he said. He told his own disciples, he said, you know the way there. And then it goes on. And Thomas, remember Thomas, doubting Thomas? Thomas said to him, Lord, we do not know where you're going. And how can we know the way? He says, how can we know the way? And Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except through me. That's the way. That's the way. And we wonder how we do these things that I just read in Psalms 15. We wonder, how many people wonder, how do we do these things? I mean, it's just about impossible to do these things. You do it through Jesus, friend. That's how you do it. It's the only way. It's the only way. You can't do it on your own. You can't. I'm a grand witness of this. And I'm not scared to share it. I mean, I'll show you just not how weak I am, but I'm just as tempted as you are. I came in one day last week, and there was a gentleman at work. And I mean, brother, look him. I told Lisa, and this is my exact words I told her. I said, Lisa, I come the closest I have come in years to stepping back into my old ways today. I was fixing to light that man's fire. I mean, that's just how mad he made me. And I stood there, and I'm not joking, people. I stood there, and I grabbed my fist, and I said, Lord, please, God, please. And he helped me through it. That's how you do it. It hurts and it's painful. And these things do happen in life. But Jesus said, I am the way. I'm the way. I'm the truth and I'm the life. You can't get to God unless you come through me. I'm the only way. And then what did Jesus say? He said, if you love me, keep my commandments. If you love me. So do you love him? If you love him, you'll strive and you'll push hard to do the things that God said do. Even to David in the Old Testament, David asked him, who's going to be able to dwell in your tabernacle? Who's going to be able to abide there? He said, who'll be able to dwell in your holy hill? And God gave him the rules. These are the ones. These are the ones. You do this, and you'll make it. So what about whenever Jesus came? So many people say, well, we live in the New Testament. Guess what? There's probably about 300 more commands in the New Testament than there are in the Old Testament. And Jesus plainly said, if you love me, keep my commandments. There's the rules. You know the way. You know the way. He plainly told his disciples 2,000 years ago, you know the way. And people wonder how they're going to get to heaven. People do. People wonder how they get to heaven. Last week, there was another incident that happened. I was talking to a gentleman on the phone. He was wanting to know how to do something. And I was trying to explain to him on the phone. He was saying, no, it wouldn't. It ain't going to work. It ain't going to work. It ain't going to work. And I said, well, look, let me ask you this. When you received this product, did you get the instructions? I said, do you have this instruction manual that says this and this? He said, yeah. And I said, okay, on this particular thing, did you get this insert that goes in the instructions that gives you additional instruction? He said, yes, I do. He said, give me a few minutes and I'll call you back. And I stood up and I got to thinking. I said, people wonder every day why people aren't going to heaven. You ever wonder why people ain't going to heaven? They don't read the instruction book. They don't do what the instruction book says. How many of us, especially men, get a swing set and never open the instruction book, and we have parts left over? We look at the pictures, but we don't read it. And you wonder why the swing set don't work, or the wheels won't turn on a wagon. That's why. Because they don't read the instruction book. They don't read the manual that will tell them how to get there. Charles Spurgeon wrote this about this particular chapter, and I love it. And this is where I'm going to end. Charles Spurgeon said this, says, no storm shall tear him from his foundations, drag him from his anchorage, or uproot him from his place. Can you imagine this person? And he's talking about these particular 5 verses that I just read in Psalms 15. It says, no storm shall tear him from his foundation or drag him from his anchorage or uproot him from his place. Like the Lord Jesus, whose dominion is everlasting, the true Christian shall never lose his crown. He shall not only be on Zion, but like Zion. Think about that one. Not only will you be on it, but you'll be like it. Fixed and firm. It says, he shall dwell in the tabernacle of the Most High, and neither death nor judgment shall remove him from his place of privilege and blessedness. Let us betake ourselves to prayer. Listen, to prayer and examination. To prayer and examination, for this psalm is as fire for the gold. Listen, it is fire for the gold, and as a furnace for silver. Can we endure its testing power? Can you endure the testing power of those verses? Can every one of us endure those things? When these things come along in life, can you endure? Can you pass the test? Can you? Can we honestly pass the test of Psalms 15? And it's a great test. It's a hard test. But wouldn't it be better to have a hard test and get to glory and him say, brother, you ran the race. You fought that good fight. You tried to do everything that I said to do. Come into my home, you good and faithful servant. Don't we want to hear those words? Don't we want to hear those words? And it takes fighting, and it takes prayer, and it takes reading, and it takes believing and trusting and asking for help from Him. Because Jesus said, I'm the only way you're going to get to Him. And through Him, we can get to God. We can get there. We can abide in that tabernacle, and we can dwell in that holy hill. Not just on it, but in it. Be a part of it. And what did He say? And I thought this was one great thing, especially with us about the new communion. It says, let us betake